fit, and then came back here. Huge chunk of my day over there at the gym.
Nice, nice. And I saw on your Instagram you were doing kind of some foot recovery. So tell me, I know you've been dealing with a lot of injuries ever since the show. You broke your foot coming off of the show, right? Right after the show. So just tell me a little bit about how you're feeling right now, and what was that recovery? Is that the same foot, or is this just general recovery?
So I broke my foot right after the show. It left me with arthritis in my left foot, the ball of my left foot. But being able to see Dr. Shars, who I see, she's the one who dry needles me, has been helping just with the blood flow, keeping everything circulating. My right foot right now is it's doing its own thing, but staying on top of recovery is helping a lot when it comes to prevention and just further damage on that joint on my left foot.
I see, and tell me a little bit, because for those who don't know, I mean, I've kind of been following up. For those who don't know, I mean, you've been dealing with quite a bit of injuries and unfortunate circumstances. For those who don't know, just fill us in a little bit, just because it must have been quite frustrating for you. Of course, I know, coming off of the momentum of the show and all that, and having to deal with these kind of things. So just tell us a little bit of kind of what you've been going through with your injuries ever since the show.
Yeah, on the show, we had to cut like crazy amounts of weight, especially if you're a little heavier than a person who walks around for 125er. Mm-hmm. And then after the show, it was just, one thing after another. After my foot was injured, I was getting sick. I had that bacterial infection, and it was chronic. So every time I tried to start a camp and start a weight cut or start to get right into the rhythm of things, I would get set back because of that illness, because of that sickness. And it was just, I was eating right, everything. I was on top of everything. I was on top of my recovery. I was on top of my fuel, pre and post workouts. It was just, my body was just probably something to do with the weight cut, something to do with trying to bounce right back into everything. But that was pretty frustrating, especially when it comes to cutting weight, because that's one of the most important parts. Your weight down, you're fighting in a division.
Yep.
And if you can't make that division, then what are you fighting for? Mm-hmm. So it was kind of hard to get into the whole groove of it. But after I got my tonsillectomy, it's been seeming to it seems to be going pretty well now.
Great. And you had mentioned previously July is a brief date of return, but of course, with dealing with all these things, you want to make sure you're 100%, right? And when you look at it now, September 8th, UFC 228, would you say this is perfect, best case scenario of when you'd like to return?
Yeah, I mean, there's never going to be a fighter who's 100% going into a fight.
Yeah.
It's not part of it's not part of what we do. We get punched and we get kicked and we kick and we punch. So it's never going to be an ideal person, not never going to feel 110%, but that's kind of the part that you're going to have to mentally be tough about and, overcome all these obstacles. So it really just pushes you and makes you see what you're capable of.
For sure. And weight cutting is such a controversial topic, right? I mean, Dana's talking about going back to the early 4 p.m. weigh-ins, that format they had before. What are your thoughts? Does that affect you if they were to really implement it and go back to the 4 p.m. weigh-ins, or do you prefer the early weigh-ins?
Yeah, I prefer the early weigh-ins. Typically, when someone's cutting weight, they don't cut for just that day. Mm-hmm. It's like a couple of days beforehand, and I can't sleep ever the day before weigh-ins or really the week of the fight. So, I mean, the sooner the better, and the faster we'll be able to put more fuel into our bodies to recover for the next day. I don't think it's going to be less or more important for anybody else to be making weight with it pushed back to 4 again. Whoever was going to miss weight in the morning is going to miss weight in the evening. That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy because it's like every fighter I ask says they want the early weigh-ins, and Dana's just so, statistically we've seen a lot of people miss weight, and Dana's adamant. I think he kind of reacts in the moment, right? When you're emotional in the moment. But he was saying that there are a lot of fighters that were saying they wanted the 4 p.m. weigh-ins, which I don't think is the case because I haven't heard a single person. So it'll be quite interesting to see if they do. I mean, he seemed pretty serious about it. I don't know if it was a like a heated, emotional, in the moment thing, or he's actually gonna do it. But it seems like every single fighter wants the early wins, and it's you guys going through it at the end of the day, not us, not everybody on the outside.
Hmm. Yeah, it's probably just the minority of people who are missing weight who say it's because of the early weigh-ins,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately, that's not the reason.
And what are your weight cuts generally like? Is it a tough cut down to 125? Do you work with a nutritionist? Just tell me a little bit about your weight cutting process.
Yeah, I work with a nutritionist. He's a dietitian over at the UFC PI.
Okay.
His name is Clint, and I've been working with him since I got off of the show. He had some really crucial information when it comes to my metabolism and the reasons why, people can get so high after their cuts in their weight on the scale. It's just everybody's different. So without that information, I would totally be lost. Right now, I am cutting pretty heavy, but that's kind of what a lot of people at 25 are doing. 25 is a new division. A lot of people thought that they could cut to 15, but now that there's that option for 25ers, a lot of 35ers and 45ers are trying to make that cut, and they're all trying to get there as quick as they can because they think, this new division brings new people, new faces, new eyes to the whole UFC scene, and that's what's going to be followed in the end. So in comparison to a lot of other girls, I think I'm probably around the right size.
I see, and you were saying that because the show is probably the perfect way to kind of introduce the division, right? It has a lot of eyes. It's a reality TV show. When you look back, would you do it again?
Yeah, I mean, it got me the belt.
Yeah.
Hindsight, you never want to put your body through any type of stress that's going to be pretty influential in the long run. In a negative outlook in your life, you want to be able to live till you're 70. And when you look at the grand scheme of this picture, it's only temporary. Fighters only have a certain amount of time to be the best that they're going to be and to have their body in tip-top shape. But unfortunately, sometimes their body being in tip-top shape means they're going to have to cut out a lot of their muscle. They're going to have to be on diet restrictions that are just useless. Makes them useless in camp, makes them useless when they're going into training and stuff. But bottom line is you got to make that weight. If that's your division, it's your weight. But I think with the new division added in, there are definitely more options, more opportunities for people to bounce around and see where they're most comfortable at, see where they're going to be most healthy. I know for me, having my body being healthy, having my joints being healthy in the longer run, like looking outside of this is the ultimate goal. I'd like to live till I'm 70 without any osteoporosis and all that other stuff.
Absolutely. And looking back, what would you say was the best part of the house, like actually being in the house, or what was the worst part?
The best part was like there's no distraction at all. I think a lot of girls kind of struggled with the no TV, with the no music, with the no phones, but it was kind of just what I needed to stay in the zone and not get distracted.
And how about the worst part?
First part was probably that last cut because it was a week in between that I had to cut, and then there's a week, and then I had to cut again. Before the show, I only cut to 125 twice, and all my other fights, amateur fights, pro fights, were at 135. So I knew it was going to be a struggle, but I knew what the outcome, the potential gaining of the belt was going to be. So, I just kind of just toughed it out and did what I had to do.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the UFC PI. How much time did you spend there?
We went there every Tuesday when we were on the show. We shuttled over there every Tuesday to use their facility, to ask any sort of questions we needed, especially when it came to rehab. They had Normatech, they had nutritionists, dietitians, they had cryo, they had the hot cold plunge, they had the saunas for weight cuts. They were extremely super duper helpful.
And you were there a couple of weeks ago, right? Correct. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I was there a couple weeks ago. We were doing a test. The PI has a lot of fighters doing tests just to, the MMA game is still so new. So they're coming, all they have are theories until they can see everybody's test results. So right now, I think they're just trying to gather as much information and data as possible so that they can come up with some sort of experimental guess, or at the end, whatever needs to be done at certain weight classes. They're getting that out to the coaches, that information out to the coaches and fighters, so that nobody's feeling depleted, especially when it comes to training, because that's the huge issue, right? Is the weight cuts and stuff.
And did you get a chance to do any training when you're at the PI?
Yeah, I did a lot of strength and conditioning. I wasn't able to venture off and go into other MMA schools. I just did the tests and hung out at the PI and did some strength and conditioning sessions. It's very informative for me because that's before I even fought, I was a coach, I was an instructor. So learning new things about my body and what I'm capable of and what every body is capable of is pretty interesting to me.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your fight. Of course, first title defense, September 8th, UFC 228 in Dallas, Texas. We finally have a location. How long have you guys known that it was Dallas, by the way? As soon as we did, or was it?
I've known for about a week or two.
Okay, so pretty.
But I'm also pretty bad about keeping up with a lot of stuff when it comes to searching my name through the internet and stuff.
Okay, I think we pretty much found out around that time because it was kind of like they didn't know where to go with it. Have you been told if you're the main event, by the way, or not?
I haven't been told. Okay. I probably have, honestly. I just haven't read it. Really.
All right, I see. And let's talk about the matchup. You're taking on Valentina Shevchenko. I remember coming off the show that the flyweight division, other than the house, because obviously you went through the house and you won that show. There wasn't a clear-cut contender. They still, you had Paige Van Zandt's name was flying around, Valentina Shevchenko, but they hadn't fought yet. Now, the division kind of, progressed a little bit. We've got a couple of girls who've notched a couple of wins. What do you think of Valentina as an opponent? How would you break her down?
She's very quick, I gave her a lot of respect before the fights. I mean, before the Tough House. Mm-hmm. I knew who she was before that, and I always just admired her striking. She's really quick, and she has great awareness. Her reaction times are on point. But I think that's just what's going to make it more fun and interesting. Very entertaining fight. I like to kind of do my thing. I'm still fairly new to the game, especially when you match us together. You see her record, you see my record, you see how long she's been fighting, you see how long I've been fighting. I seriously just got into the sport because I loved it. It's a passion. So that's kind of what keeps me going back. I wasn't necessarily raised into this sport, even though my dad was a boxer. It was something that I kind of found, and I appreciate it because it brings out the best in me. My opponents bring out the best in me when I stand in that cage with somebody who I admire. And then, typically I've been the underdog, so that doesn't have anything to do with anything when it comes to my mental game or my mentality and confidence and thinking I'm going to win. You have two choices. You can either think you're going to lose or you think you're going to win. So, I always go into the fight having fun, knowing that I'm going to have fun, knowing that it's going to be entertaining because the pace and the pressure I put on the opponents. But each fight just keeps getting harder and harder, and that's something that I'd like to stay on. That's why I'm doing this. To be the best, you got to beat the best.
And is this surreal? I mean, the Ultimate Fighter show obviously is a big deal. You win that show, you become champion. Now your first title defense, pay-per-view. I mean, do you ever imagine coming into the house that all of this would be happening?
No, going into the house, I took it one step at a time. There are so many girls to look ahead at and be like, oh, I might potentially fight her. But you've got to get through that first obstacle before you can start, jump into the next ship. You got to be realistic about your goals and your approach, and that's kind of where I was about it. So I knew when I got off of the show that she was chasing after a title defense. I still wanted to fight Sarge. I still do. I still think that's, unfinished business. But that's, yeah, I never would have thought that, like, I'd be where I'm at, especially going into this show, because I was telling everybody I was applying for colleges at the same time I was going to go and try out, and heard I got into Fort Lewis the week of. I was trying out there, and then heard I was going to stay on Tough 2 weeks later, and was like, all right, I guess we're giving this a go. It's kind of I'm just taking the ride, enjoying the journey.
Absolutely. And coming into this fight as an underdog, I mean, you were an underdog on the show, number 14 pick. So is this kind of like, for you, it's like I've been there before. I've been the underdog before. This, like, it's no pressure at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every match starts 0-0. I mean, anyone can talk anybody up. Everyone saw how, like, Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm fight went. They saw how Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey fights went. Like, there's no MMA math that's going to be able to, like, tell you the outcome 100%. So, yeah, it doesn't bother me at all.
Do you think she might underestimate you, considering just because of what people are feeding her last performance? She fought a newcomer, but just the way it went and all the media feeding her and the fans feeding her, do you think she might underestimate you?
Absolutely. That's kind of what I've been feeling. I've been feeling that she's not respecting my game enough, which is fine for me. It's great for me because I know how strong I am. Yeah. I don't need anybody telling me that. But yeah, to answer the question, I definitely do.
Nice. And when you have a fight, I mean, obviously the Ultimate Fighter wasn't like that because it's like fight after fight, you're in the house, you're around the girls. But do you watch a lot of tape? Do you leave that up to your coaches? How do you usually go about training camp?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
No problem. I said when you have a fight, how do you approach it? Do you watch a lot of tape on your opponent? Do you leave that to your coaches? How do you usually go about it?
I do both. I leave it mostly up to my coaches because they're the ones I invest my trust in when it comes to developing technique. So I watch a couple of fights, but I don't obsess over it. Like I said, my kind of mindset on the whole thing in general is just enjoy the ride. Like there's so much that can be enjoyed outside of fighting as well. And I feel like a lot of the time people get obsessed and so pushed in their entire world in this MMA scene, this UFC scene, and they just study fights, and that's all they do, and they stress themselves out, and they start to self-sabotage themselves, the more fights they watch. So I watch till I can figure out a couple of things that the opponent does that keep coming up, that are most common, and then I just leave the rest up to my coaches, and then listen to what they have to say.
And do you feel like watching too much tape, like you said, like self-sabotage, that you might just not end up doing what you want to do and focusing too much on what they're doing? Do you think that yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone can throw a spinning back fist. Anyone can throw a flying knee. Does that mean that they're going to do that in every single fight? Like, should you be waiting for that every single fight? Like, no, that's just going to make you hesitant. I like to do a lot of yoga. Before I was a fighter, I was a yoga instructor. So I like to do a lot of yoga. I like to run. I'm able to run now that I'm getting stabbed in the feet pretty much every day. I like to run. I like to be by myself usually, and have that quiet space in my head just so I can, figure out, like I said, what I'm capable of, my potential and stuff. After I get a clear head from yoga or running, then everything's way more enjoyable for sure.
Nice. And coming off of the show, you said you were living in the basement. Are you still there? Have you moved out?
No, we upgraded. We're in a legit house.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. Champ life, right?
Sorry, I missed that last part again.
I said the champ life. I said the upgrade. The
champ
life.
Yeah. Now I have an actual bedroom. It's pretty sweet.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. One last thing before I let you go. Do you envision how this fight could possibly go? How do you feel like you got the job done?
I think I'm going to finish her, get the takedown and look for that finish.
Awesome. Well, Nicco, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And best of luck September 8th. Really looking forward to the fight.
Thank you very much, Farah.